IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Takshashila Institution's All Things Policy podcast. I'm Jaison from the Takshashila Institution, and in today's episode, I'm delighted to have Jaideep Vaidya, who is a sports business writer for The Signal, a business and tech newsletter. Prior to this, Jaideep worked for the Ken's Southeast Asia edition and also wrote another newsletter on sports business called The Moneyball. He used to freelance as a sports business writer for Forbes India, Mint Lounge, ET Magazine, and Quartz. Chaideep is also headed the breaking news and sports desk at scroll.in previously. Thanks a lot for joining me today on the podcast, Jaideep.
Hey, Carl. Thanks again for having me.
It is my pleasure. And yeah, there's no better time to sort of have you on the podcast than now with, the World Cup, the Cricket World Cup, scheduled to begin in less than 20 days, I believe, from now. Yeah, so I think what interested me was, the article that you had written for The Signal on the ticketing fiasco, right? And the article is titled Inside the Ticketing Chaos in Indian Cricket. And I actually found a lot of interesting threads that maybe we could look at, and which also maybe some lessons from the field of economics, right? That can also be sort of gauged from this. So essentially, the idea of the episode is to unravel, the ticketing fiasco in relation to this upcoming World Cup, and just look at how the entire process went about, right, over the last, 1.5 months, ever since the schedule was supposedly announced, but then again pulled back, as most fans would know, as most of our listeners would know. So, Jaideep, maybe if I could just start off by asking you, what was the whole confusion around the scheduling delay, right? Because normally, and you've touched upon this in your newsletter as well, that most sporting tournaments, like you're sticking to cricket tournaments, the ICC World Cup, the last edition of the ICC World Cup, the schedule was announced almost a year ago, right, before the tournament actually began. So what prompted this confusion on the part of BCCI? I mean, one would imagine that you just follow a certain template that was followed in the past. But what specifically was the scheduling delay all about?
As you rightly mentioned, like for World Cups, the schedule is out usually like at least a year before the tournament, so that, fans from across the world can plan their trips well in advance. And even the tickets are usually released like, a year or, close to a year before the tournament starts. So everything can be planned properly. And that's how it should be for a World Cup, because I mean, it is a World Cup. So you got, fans coming from all over the world. But what happened for this 2023 World Cup was that the schedule was released, I think, just 100 days before the tournament started, which is barely any time for anyone living outside India, especially in countries like Australia and England, South Africa, to, plan any trips that they wanted. And then the tickets were, I think, released around less than 2 months before the tournament was scheduled to start. So I think the BCCI has not really, spoken about why there was a delay, and neither has the ICC. But I mean, from what has been reported in the media, it's likely to do with, the whole geopolitical scenario between India and Pakistan. So Pakistan, as you may know, are technically like what's supposed to be the hosts of this Asia Cup, which just ended yesterday. But India, because, since 2008, we haven't had any, bilateral cricket with India after the Mumbai terror attacks. And the only tournaments where India and Pakistan have played together are in ICC events. But in spite like international cricket happening in Pakistan consistently now, like I think for the last 2-3 years, India is still like against traveling there. So the BCCI basically forced the Asia Cup to become like a hybrid tournament where it like more than half of it was moved to Sri Lanka, which is why like India played all of its matches in Sri Lanka, whereas in I think Pakistan, only Pakistan played their matches over there. So I think that was largely the reason. Like even so, there was the whole a game of poker going on there with Pakistan also earlier threatening that they will not travel to the World Cup if India refuses to travel to Pakistan for the Asia Cup. But eventually, like Pakistan confirmed its attendance to the World Cup. And then after that, there were issues. Even after the tournament schedule was announced 100 days, just 100 days prior to the World Cup starting, I think within a month, there were again reports saying that some of the matches could be rescheduled. And as it turned out, like I think around 9 matches were rescheduled, including the marquee India-Pakistan match, which was, I think the date was changed by a day because of, I don't know, I think it was I think the police had requested for it because there was the festive season happening and they didn't want certain date clashes. But yeah, it's just terrible optics, because these are things that you knew when the when season is going to start and when the festivals are much in advance. There was no need for this to happen at such a late stage. Now imagine if people had booked their tickets to Ahmedabad to watch the India Pakistan match, booked hotels, booked flights, and then a month later the date is changed. It's no joke, especially if you're coming from abroad, let alone fans traveling within India. You see reports of like, as soon as the World Cup schedule was announced, like we saw reports of like hotel prices in Ahmedabad, skyrocketing, flight tickets also like skyrocketing. So that would have, even now, if the date is changed after a month, then it would further increase those issues. And I don't know what fans have been through who booked who wanted to go for this match in particular.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're absolutely spot on. And I think it was justified for us to sort of begin from the scheduling delay, which then, sort of snowballed into various other sort of issues. And really, when you look at it, it's the opportunity cost, to, the match going fan, that's really come to the fore. And we will sort of touch upon this, later on when we talk about why e-tickets were not a viable option for the World Cup. So Jaideep, let's just get into maybe the ticketing fiasco as it had panned out. So there was a very popular ticketing app, the Book My Show, that was given sort of the rights to become the official platform to sell the 2023 World Cup sort of match tickets. And as many of our listeners who I'm sure would have tried to get some of these tickets, I myself had multiple attempts on Book My Show to get tickets to some of the matches, but it was a potential nightmare, right? Like just the technical glitches, the page not loading. I mean, it was just it was really a nightmarish sort of a scenario for fans who so dearly wanted to sort of get these tickets and watch their sort of like heroes in action. So if you could maybe just give me a sense of, is it normally the case that you have a single ticketing platform? Because in my view, that tends to create a single point of failure, right? And that is what essentially it turned out to be. So is there a logic in giving just one ticketing sort of platform the entire rights, whereas maybe it could have been done across various other platforms, and maybe you don't experience the same kind of problems that we did? So yeah, just your thoughts on that.
So I'm not sure about the logic, but I mean that's what usually happens in such tournaments, is that there is only one official ticketing partner. That has been the case previously also. Even in other countries, there's usually just one ticketing partner. It's almost like any other sponsor that the tournament has. Like for example, the ICC will have like one beverage partner, or one, I don't know, like e-commerce partner or something like that. So there's usually just at least for the host country, there's only one ticketing platform, whereas the ICC has several other official travel agents who cater to the demand outside the host country. So that
right.
fans from
In
other
other
countries,
yeah,
yes, so that fans from other countries can travel, and they're usually those hospitality tickets which include a hotel stay and things like that. So there are ICC has about, I think, 15 to 20 official travel agents who look after but those are only for the hospitality tickets. For the general tickets, there's usually just one platform. Yeah. And I mean, as you mentioned about the glitches, I mean, yeah, the technical glitches, maybe you can, understand it, because at the end of the day, India has like over 700 million internet users. So there's potentially 700 million people who would have tried to book a ticket. Even though, I mean, I'm sure Book My Show would have known that before, they started selling, and they should technically have had, kept their servers ready for such a load. But I think the main concern, more than the technical glitches, was the fact that there was a severe scarcity of tickets available for fans to purchase. I think once the sales started, so I mean, I'll tell you from my own personal experience. I was placed in a queue for, like, it started at 1 hour, then it became 2 hours, it became 5 hours, 8 hours, and eventually at one point the queue was like over a day. But then within 15 minutes, I was I was told that the tickets are sold out. So there was very clearly, a scarcity of tickets, and some people on social media, the tech savvy social media users, even went into the source code of Book My Show and found that there were like, I think, around 8,000 tickets only available for the India-Pakistan match, which is being played in a stadium that has capacity of over 130,000. So that's like less than 10%. So there was a lot of criticism for, well, Book My Show and BCCI, although, like, if it's a scarcity of tickets is not really Book My Show's fault, because they can only sell the tickets that are available to them. There were other users who pointed out a flag in the source code called enable fake seat blocking, which was active for just the India matches. And a product person told me that this probably means that it was set up as a way for someone to do dummy bookings where you don't actually need. So when you make a ticket booking, you're given like a PNR number or a ticket number, and you have like a actual transaction going through. But what a dummy booking does is that it saves, say, a ticket without an actual transaction going through, and that's probably done because someone wanted to keep the tickets for themselves and not sell it. So yeah, there were a lot of such issues, and there was a lot of commotion and a lot of backlash for the organizers regarding this. And eventually, like, the BCCI reacted, and I think on September 6th, they announced that an additional 400,000 tickets would be made available for purchase on Book My Show. I mean, they made it sound as if, we're doing you a favor and releasing 400,000 tickets. Correct. But then where were these 400,000 tickets in the first place? Why were they not released earlier? And even with these additional 400,000 tickets, if you do like a back of the envelope calculation, that still accounts to less than 20% of the total number of tickets that should be available for all the matches. So the question still arises as to where are the rest of the 80% of the tickets going?
No, I mean, it sort of baffles every kind of logic and imagination here. Which actually brings me to, like, one of the more interesting sort of threads in this article that you covered was the two types of sort of ticketing systems that have been used over many years, right, across sporting tournaments. So the one that was applied here is the first come first serve sort of system, where the first person to let's say the ticketing sort of platform and who gets access to the selection of the seats is at an advantage, right, when it comes to getting their tickets. But the other system, right, which has been used, in fact, in the 2016 T20 World Cup, which incidentally also happened in India, where they use a ballot system, right? So can you give us maybe a sense of what are the different types of systems that could have been sort of deployed here in this context, and what were the advantages of having a ballot for a particular tournament like this over a first come first serve system?
Yeah, so first come first serve, as the name suggests, is just like you put a certain number of tickets on the platform, and then whoever gets to them first buys them. While okay, the advantage of such a system is that everything is transparent and it's based on like a fastest finger first kind of thing. So there's no, you cannot really claim that you were cheated or something like that. Whereas in a ballot or a lottery, you basically register for the ballot, and then the organizers eventually let you know in a few days whether you have made it or not. This is usually done when they know that the demand is quite high compared to the supply. So it makes sense if if you do a ballot so that everything is fair. But then again, that raises questions as to it. You can potentially raise questions as to whether things were done fairly, because no one knows how this ballot or lottery was taking place. But I think like that would have been a better system to use, because then at least for sure whether you are getting a ticket or not, rather than having to go on the platform and waiting in queue for hours and still not knowing whether you will get a ticket. So I myself had applied for the ballot in for the 2016 World T20 for the India West Indies semi-final in Mumbai, and luckily I got through that ballot, and I was given a booking window of around half an hour, I think, where I could go and buy my ticket. And everything was smooth. There was no hassle whatsoever. I bought my ticket, and within a few days it was delivered to me. And if in case any tickets are left from the ballot for whatever reasons, like people didn't turn up and buy their ticket or whatever, then they go into like a general like first come first serve sale after the ballot. That's also what happened during the 2019 World Cup in the UK, where they actually had two ballots. And after those two ballots, if there were some tickets left over after the two ballots, then they went into a general sale. And that is how the England and Wales Cricket Board sold the tickets for the 2019 World Cup. And I think that was a smart thing to do, and what should have been done for 2023 also, especially considering it's India and the demand would have been far higher.
Stay tuned to All Things Policy. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.
So I think when we look at the actual number of tickets that were made available for sort of sale or was made available for purchase for the fan was not more than around 20-25%, right? And there is a political sort of economy to this, right? That where did the rest of the tickets go? And you have the ICC, its sponsors getting a share of some of these tickets, which I guess is understandable given that this is a commercial sort of side to the tournament. But can you just take us through what happens to a large chunk of the tickets that go to the BCCI, right? And we know the BCCI is the overarching authority, but it is represented by its state cricket associations and the various clubs that are a part of it. So could you just maybe help us understand this, the economy of how the ticket distribution, tends to take place, right? And I'm sure this is not confined only to India, but yeah, if that's something that you can shed some light on.
Yeah, so for a World Cup, what happens is the ICC allots the ticket selling and distribution rights to the local organizing committee, which in this case is the BCCI. And the ICC in its contract has, a clause which, allows it to have a certain number of tickets for itself and its sponsors and partners. But from what I am led to understand, the ICC's allocation is like just a few thousand tickets, and definitely not more than, say, 10% of the total number of tickets. So the rest of the tickets, okay, let's assume if ICC's allocation is, 10%. And from what we are seeing, the fans getting not more than 20%. Let's assume it's 20%. So that's 30% of the tickets. So you're still left with 70% of the tickets. And where are these going? So at least in India, what has been happening, what did happen during the 2011 World Cup, which was co-hosted by India, and the 2016 World T20, is that, the rest of the tickets, like a significant chunk, do go to the BCCI and its state association. So there are like 28 state associations that are affiliated to the BCCI. And each state association also has various district cricket associations under it. They also have various cricket clubs, and even like I think the Mumbai Cricket Association even has some academies that come under it. Right. So it's not like everyone from these clubs and academies gets a ticket, but you get a sense of how widespread this web is.
Yeah.
And the potential number of people who would be tapping up the state association or BCCI to get them a ticket. In fact, like during the 2011 World Cup, where Mumbai's Wankhede Stadium hosted the final, only 4,000 tickets were available for the fans to purchase. And according to a Cricinfo report back then, apparently 20,000 tickets went to the Mumbai Cricket Association's clubs and various members. And you have to remember that Wankhede Stadium's capacity is just like 35,000. So, 60% of the tickets are going to... Yeah, 60% of the tickets are going to the Mumbai Cricket Association's clubs. So that just gives you a sense of, what's happening in India. So
this is an exclusive like membership benefit, right, of being part of.
Yeah. So like I said, that not all members of these clubs would be eligible for a ticket, but you can imagine the kind of lobbying that happens, for these tickets. And it's just, crazy to imagine the kind of what must be happening. And you don't even know whether people who are given these tickets are actually using them or selling them in the black market, or because there's no transparency here. Everything is opaque. Like you see, if you go to Ahmedabad for the India-Pakistan match outside the stadium, I'm sure you'll see tickets selling for like probably lakhs. Where are these tickets coming from? No one has any idea.
No, I think this is it's quite fascinating, but also distressing to hear as somebody who's been watching the game, watching matches here in India for many years, to sort of understand that there is an underbelly to how these ticket distributions happen. So I'd strongly recommend reading Jaideep's piece on this particular matter for a lot more nuggets, lot more information on this. So Jaideep, just moving on to the final sort of segment, and here I wanted to sort of understand that while let's say we give them the benefit of doubt that they wanted to operationalize the ticket sales completely online. So what was stopping the BCCI from having e-tickets that people can show at the ticket gates while entering the stadium? And also given we have taken sort of a front-footed approach when it comes to digital sort of solutions in the country. So what was the roadblock, or was it a logistical issue? Was it related to the technology? Yeah, and why is this such a difficult proposition, let's say in 2023?
Yeah, so this is one of the, those incomprehensible things that, I've failed to understand why it's happening. But what happens is that you sell cricket match tickets online, but if I buy a ticket online, I'm still made to go and collect a physical copy of that ticket at the stadium. And for that, I have to queue up at a window, and that totally defeats the purpose of, buying an online ticket. I might as well go and stand in the line and buy an actual ticket at the stadium. Then why am I buying it online?
Yeah.
But I mean, so if you're, a regular match going fan in India, you would know that, this is quite common, and it has even unfortunately led to like stampedes and even police baton charges. Just last year it happened in Hyderabad, where there was a baton charge by the police because of like long queues and like a stampede like situation where several fans were injured. And that happened because there were fans there who were queuing up both to buy physical tickets and fans who had bought online tickets who were there to collect the physical copies. You even heard stories of that happening in Mumbai, where, for the India, I think one of the India Australia ODIs, if I'm not mistaken, where people who had bought tickets online were made to go and collect it outside the stadium. It happened again during the IPL final, if I'm not wrong, this year, where people had to go to the Narendra Modi Stadium and collect their tickets that they had bought online. I took these questions to, people from the industry who know how these things work. And what I was told is that there are two issues. One is the lack of technology, and one is the lack of infrastructure. So if you have to sell a completely, online ticket or a mobile ticket, you need to have the technology in place so that people cannot screenshot those tickets and share it with others, because that brings about a security issue and duplication, and it's an issue in terms of reining in counterfeit tickets. But while countries abroad and ticketing agencies abroad have that technology where you can curb the sharing of screenshots, in India that technology does not exist. And secondly, the other issue is that there are only like a handful stadiums in India that have the infrastructure to actually facilitate a mobile ticket. So for that, at the turnstile, you need like a scanner, which you can, users can just like show their QR codes on their phones, and the scanner will scan it and they can pass through the turnstile. But currently, most of the turnstiles at cricket stadiums in India can only accept physical tickets. So if you have to use mobile tickets, you'll need to like station people over there with like handheld scanning devices. And that's like just additional resources for the ticketing partner to bear. And I mean, so this does happen. So for example, during the last IPL, I had gone for a match in Chennai where I had a mobile ticket and there was a QR code, and I did not have to collect a physical ticket. I just went to the gate and there was a person from the ticketing agency with a handheld scanning device, and he just like scanned it on my phone, and I could go through. But what I'm told is that, I mean, this is one of the exceptions, rare cases where they might have done it as an experiment. But largely, it's you need a physical ticket. But because the problem with handheld scanning device is that the data that it collects is only for that particular gate. And whereas the ticketing and the security agencies at a stadium would need real-time data for the entire stadium, so that they know how many fans have entered through which gate and are sitting in which zone, and that's important for them to know in terms of planning emergency evacuations and contingency plans. So they need that data in real time, whereas with a handheld device, it's just like getting you data for one particular gate. And so then you'll need to like collate data from all the handheld devices at all the gates, and that'll take like at least 20 to 30 minutes, which defeats the purpose. Like you can't have real-time data. But yes, that's apparently the reason why physical tickets are still used in India. But I mean, yeah, it's just the ironies, one of the many ironies of a country that has literally reached the moon, but we cannot figure out how to have completely online cricket match tickets.
Yeah. No, if you look at a tournament or maybe a league like the English Premier League, where a lot of stadiums do have the turnstiles that facilitate mobile tickets, and I think that brings us back to the fundamental issue with how the BCCI has handled this, and it's a testament to how little care is given to a match going fan, right, in India. And this is across sports, and it's not confined only to cricket. That a match going fan's experience of actually watching the match, the experience of having to let's say entertain themselves at these stadiums, be it with their families or with friends. So I feel like the experience of the match going fan isn't really in the scheme of things, right? When you look at the BCCI's, you sort of in terms of their revenue sort of making sort of models, right? And the match going fans isn't the centerpiece.
Yeah. So if you've seen the kind of, money that the BCCI makes from selling media rights, like, billions of dollars, what money they do receive from, gate receipts, I mean, match going fans is just like, a fraction of it. So yeah, I mean, the whole match going experience in Indian cricket is a completely different story altogether. Obviously, this ticketing part is, a part of it, but overall, like you see I've read several, accounts on social media where people complain about, the lack of facilities at cricket stadiums in India, whether it's like clean toilets or like proper food. You're not allowed to take water. You have to even water is like sold by glass at like 10 rupees a glass or something like that. Yeah, so it's clearly, not the best match going experience. I mean, especially like if you talk about the cleanliness and hygiene of the toilets, like especially for women, it's really terrible, like what, the kind of stories that you hear. That's just, yeah, it's one of the unfortunate things about watching cricket in India, that no one actually cares about the fans that, make that effort to go to the stadium and, spend like hundreds to thousands of rupees to do it. But yeah, clearly, like, not many people care about those fans, and it's all about television. And honestly, with the kind of, experience that we've had in the last few years, I honestly don't see why it even makes sense to go to a stadium. Like, I'd honestly just rather watch everything on TV.
Yeah, no, which actually was something I wanted to just sort of end the conversation on, was to ask you whether you're actually planning to attend any of the matches. But clearly, I think you favor sort of just sitting in the comfort of home and be watching these matches.
Yeah, so I was really keen to go for the India-Australia match in Chennai. I'd even booked so after the schedule was released, I even booked an Airbnb in Chennai. But then we had the whole, fiasco on Book My Show, where, it was next to impossible to get a ticket. I tried twice. Like, there was one pre-sale window for MasterCard customers. So I tried in that, and then I didn't get through. Then I tried again when the general sale began. Again, I didn't get through. And eventually, like, I just, canceled. Luckily, my Airbnb was cancelable, so I did not lose any money there. And luckily, I did not have to, like, book any flight or, train tickets or anything like that. So I did not lose money. But yeah, like, I canceled the Airbnb, and then a few days later, BCCI announced that, the additional 400,000 tickets would be available. But I had no regrets, because I knew for certain that I was not going to get it even then.
Okay. At this rate, it probably makes a whole lot more sense to maybe join one of these clubs that are part of the state association and, and expect for a ticket. But Jaideep, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It was, again, wonderful speaking to you. I would strongly urge our sort of listeners to subscribe to Jaideep's newsletter. It's called The Playbook, right? By The Signal.
Yes.
And it's fantastic, and I strongly recommend the same. We will sort of, put a link to this particular edition on the episode show notes. So do check it out. Once again, Jaideep, thank you so much. And I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Carl. Pleasure being here as always. And yeah, thanks for having me.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.